The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. It's where we all begin. Welcome to Lazy Dog Typewriters.
We bring you the circus, the Pied Piper whose magic tunes lead children of all ages from 6 to 60 into a tinsel and spun candy world of reckless beauty and mounting laughter, whirling thrills, of rhythm, excitement, and grace, of daring and blaring and dance, of high-stepping horses and high-flying stars.
At about the same time that the greatest show on earth was winning Academy Awards, Smith Corona introduced the electric portable typewriter. Like the movie, this model electrified its audience too, providing thrills and chills with its electric motor. Soft touch, daring good looks, and a quick, responsive keyboard. Smith Corona wasn't clowning around with their new model. It was built upon the dependable Model 5 platform, the Silent Super. It was offered in 3 colors, including beige, alpine blue, and a lovely sea foam green. The earliest models had white Samsonite travel cases before Smith Corona switched to brown. The electric logo was white in the first year, before switching to red sometime in 1959. The better to resemble the Ringling Brothers posters or a clown's nose, I suppose. The typewriter pulled out all the stops and offered a full keyboard, including a dedicated number 1 key, tabs, and plenty of sound insulation to tame its lion of an electric motor, which purrs along quietly when you type. There's no hiding the elephant in the room. In 1958, Smith Corona electric portable typewriter may be one of the best electric typewriters made. Now, let the show begin.
Howdy folks, and welcome to Lazy Dog Typewriters, where we are always performing without a net. And welcome to the big top. Here in the center ring, we have a lovely Smith Corona electric portable typewriter. If you think you've seen this typewriter before, you must have been looking at a Smith Corona Silent Super, because this model is essentially an improved and electrified version of the Smith Corona Silent Super. So, giving you just a quick overview, it's a very nice compact design. It retained the very same shell casing that is on the Smith Corona Silent Supers. It has a slightly over 9-inch wide platen, and it comes with all the full features that a Silent Super has, including significant sound reduction by use of sound dampening panels on the inside, and also the main difference, of course, is the addition of an electric motor, which a bright engineer was able to figure out how to place a small electric motor inside the shell case of a Series 5, which resulted in giving us the 5TE. So, very obvious differences. You have a touch control, an impression control on the left-hand side on this knob, which can be varied, and it controls the number of copies that you would make, and it is simply adjusting a spring, which controls the intensity with which the type bars strike the platen, and then we have an on-off switch. And without much further ado, we'll get into that. So, it's a Silent Super, essentially, so it has a fully featured keyboard. Now, what does that mean, Kevin?
So, it means it has a dedicated number 1 key, exclamation and all. It has a tab.
So, as Kevin noted, yes, you've got the all-important tab, and you have the idea also with these machines that the tab is set and cleared on the front control panel. In the previous versions, not the Silent Supers, but the earlier editions of the Smith Coronas, you would have your tabs back here, and you would manually set them. But with the Silent Super and the Series 5 and also the 5TE, of which we have an example here. That process has been put up into the front of the machine. So, swinging back around, your dedicated 1, your impression control, and your on-off switch. Let's flicker on. And I'm not sure how much that sound is coming through on the camera, but it's a very quiet little hum, which is really impressive for a machine that's almost 60 years old. There are a pair of 2 belts here on the side, and if I'll work in a picture of what those belts look like. But they're very thin, but they get the job done. And the only flaw on this machine, just jumping to ahead, is if you lose those belts, if those belts do break, and they will eventually wear out at some point, you'll have to repair those. And hunting down replacement parts can be something of a challenge. So that is the one drawback to an electric machine, is it has more moving parts, almost by definition. So we have our on-off switch here. One of the neat little things here is you've got Smith, Corona, and Electric. You notice that the Electric logo is written in red. The very earliest models have that written in white. And in the background here, as you may see, right down here, you'll see one of the cases. That is from the 1957 first year of production. It's relatively rare-ish. And then off to the left is a standard 1958 and later version of the brown case that came with these models. As Kevin mentioned in his introduction, these machines came in a beige, an alpine blue, and this lovely sea foam. And the reason why we have this entire circus theme is because it definitely reminded us of a classic Barnum and Bailey Ringling Brothers promotional poster for their circus. And so the kids have gone to some effort to create some props for you here. So we've got our lion tamer, and got our giraffe, and all the kinds of things you might expect to see at the surface. This particular example of electric portable has shown up with a few scuffs and scrapes, which aren't too uncommon, but you see one right here. We tried to do a color match. That was down to bare metal, and we got the color pretty good, but the problem is it's really difficult to match the crinkle coat finish which you have on these machines. So I'm not too proud, but we did our best on replacing some of these. We also have a few ink splotches, and I made the decision not to try to completely remove these after testing 4 or 5 different toxic chemicals to get these off, and all I was succeeding in doing was splotching the paint even more. It just wasn't worth it, so I figured to leave some character, some blemish, just like you might find on any circus performer, the bearded lady, etc. This will be our example. But back to the common features. You've got your carriage return arm right here. You have your platen release, and you pull this index knob out. That gives you free wheeling of the platen. You have your line selector index here, 3, 2, and 1. There is no 1.5 space, which I kind of miss because I really like the 1.5 setting. That's kind of my perfect spacing. In the back, we have our tabs, which are the standard push and slide tabs. Of course, you got your paper bale, which has a nice easy lift option here. We have the ability to throw this lever, which will put us in freewheeling permanently. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a little bit of a vestigial holdout, which is your paper claw, I guess is what you call it, paper finger. Thank you. Not a claw, but a finger. And that will hold your paper up against the platen when you need it to. But I find that these kind of just get in the way, so I try to put them as far away as possible when I'm using the machine. Okay. On the right-hand side, as is customary, you have your carriage release arm, which will move your carriage, and your platen knobs here as well. Katie will help us take a look inside the electric portable. Go ahead and open the ribbon cover, Katie. There you go. Now, what you may not have heard, but which I hope you did hear, why I had her do it that way, is there is a safety switch right here that must be depressed by this. I'll lift up the camera a little bit. There is the safety switch here, which is depressed by this mechanism here when you close the lid. And what that does is, if that switch becomes opened up, it disconnects the electrical circuit to the motor. And that's just one little safety thing, but it's something to keep in mind if you're working on it. So we have our red indicator as it's on, our safety switch is up, and you can see what we have here is an elite pitch type, 12 characters per inch, very legible and very straightforward, very common. Our ribbon reverse is automatic. When you have a grommet or an eyelet in the ribbon, it will hit this, trigger this mechanism, and that will automatically reverse your ribbon. But you also have another control down here, which is your manual ribbon reverse, and you can see those mechanisms moving when you push on them, so you have the ability to automatically reverse the ribbon. This is a fully featured machine, so you also have a ribbon color selector. Here we have the upper position, stencil, and then red for the lower position. This here is a little bit new. This is part of your switch circuitry for your electric motor. So that's what, when this switch is on and this switch is thrown, that is what is activating and deactivating the motor.
Looks weird.
On the back of the machine we have our typical rabbit ears, which look very appropriate for the rabbit ear TV antennas that were contemporaneous with this machine in the 50s, and that will help keep your paper from flopping over backwards. Alright, let's get ready for a quick typing test. We'll go ahead and insert our paper. Our margins have been pretty much set, and we'll see what we can do. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So pretty nice, crisp impression, and overall very satisfying. One of the main differences you have with the power of electricity is that you don't have to worry about using the physical impact on the keys from your finger strokes to make a good impression. The impression is going to be good each and every time you press the key because the machine is doing all the work for you. And it's really one of the highlights of this machine is its electrification, which is kind of an obvious statement, but the highlight is that you get such a great, quick, easy impression. It's really forgiving for a poor typist such as myself to be able to type on an electric machine, and it's a real treat to be able to type on an electric machine that looks like a classic vintage Series 5 machine. It kind of gives you the best of both worlds. They hadn't yet moved to the power return button, which is something of an improvement, but I think it's an improvement that went the wrong way for me because I really appreciate using the carriage return arm on this model and also other models that came later that did have still the carriage return arm. It just gives me that connection to the typewriter that you don't necessarily get when you have the power return button, which on most of these Smith Coronas is a really violent power return. It's almost a miracle in my mind that these things still work after having such powerful returns. I wanted to give you just a quick overview of this case, which is the early and somewhat more rare white case. Functionally is identical to the other brown cases, but it really does look kind of neat. It's a bit of the white whale when it comes to these machines. And here's a peek at our earlier Smith Corona Electric in our collection. And you'll notice, of course, that the electric logo is in white on the early editions. Here is a look at the standard case for these machines and many others, just the holiday travel case in brown. Very solid, rugged case made by Samsonite. Really got the job done. If you think that we like the Smith Corona portable electric typewriter, you are absolutely right, because we have three nearly identical machines. As we mentioned, the white logo is the oldest, 1957, early year production. And then we have two 1958s, 59s with their red logos, and all of them are the same, seafoam green color. We haven't found any beige or alpine blue, but we are always on the hunt for them. One tiny little thing I've noticed about these machines is these two seem to have the original stock two-prong plug. Of course, none of these are polarized. These 1958 ones have the same gray cord. But this one has come to us, the earlier one has come to us, and I believe they replaced or rewired the motor on this one, because he has a considerably larger, non-standard plug, so it has a pass-through adapter, which is a nice little feature. But that's just another little added bonus that came to us through some typewriter repairman in the past, and we say thank you very much. That does lead me to one other con which I hadn't really thought of, and that is there was no thought given, it would seem, to how to properly store the cord. So what you end up doing is just sort of wadding it up and putting inside the case in kind of a not very slick way. But if there's better thoughts on that, I think they came out with that later for where compartments and places to put the cords with these electrics, but it's a little bit of a nuisance with these guys. And here's a comparison between the Series 5 and then a later Series 5.5 or 6 hybrid, which was made for Sears, and this is the Sears Electric 12. So one of the biggest differences, of course, is that you have a 12-inch platen carriage as opposed to the slightly larger than 9-inch carriage on this one, more compact. So You can fit an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper horizontally, maybe a spreadsheet or some other larger piece of paper if you were working on this model. It has a more angular design and I think a very nice black and gold trim setup, but it's essentially the same machine, with the exception, as you can see, that the keys have changed. We've gone from the flat keys to more tubular or cylindrical keys, which were common in the Electra and other machines of the late and mid to late 60s. But you can see where the evolution took place, and Dwayne Jensen in his videos makes a great case for how they simply just kept one design, very simple design, where we have all of our stuff and our motor is just right here in the bottom left hand corner. Sometimes you'll see a vertical bell here and sometimes it's horizontal as shown in here, and I think this earliest version of the Smith Corona we have actually has the bell in this orientation. But very minor changes and just a great design that they stuck with and they stayed with for a long time.
Now here are the pros and cons.
Alright, the 1958 Smith Corona Electric Portable really is one of our favorite machines. It's got a ton of pros and just a few cons. Let's take a look. Alright, for a pro, it's got a beautiful classic styling which is directly taken from the proven and very popular Silent Super and the Series 5, as it makes sense. It's an evolutionary design. With that electric motor, it provides a light, crisp touch. So you have the benefit of having a manual typewriter layout, but also the very first benefits of having the ability to be a less skilled typist and still have excellent imprint. It's less reliant on your keystrokes to make a good imprint, but it still provides a touch and a feel that's reminiscent of typing on a very nice manual typewriter. It has a fully featured feature set, including a full keyboard with a dedicated 1 exclamation key, plus and minus, a tab. It has a ribbon color selector, and it has a touch control, with also the added benefit of having an impression control, which allows you to regulate how hard the platen is struck by the typewriter. And that was useful mostly back in the day when you need to worry about making carbon copies. It's less useful now unless you have a lighter ribbon, and you can then, if you dial to 11 if you want to in your Spinal Tap. Now, as to cons, well, the very obvious one is it requires electricity, so that can impact your mobility somewhat. You have to be near somewhere where you can plug in to get your work done. Therefore, it's less mobile, and because of that electric motor, it does have more moving parts. The belts that I talked about are probably the weakest link in the chain. The motors themselves seem to have been unbelievably reliable, to have persisted for so long with so little maintenance and lubrication, and they just seem to work. So they're very well designed, but they are a moving part, and that makes them liable to failure. Lastly, because you do have a very small motor in there, the machines are ever so slightly heavier. I guess on the order of 10 to 12 ounces would be my guess, maybe as much as a pound, rather than their siblings. So all in all, we think that the Smith Corona Electric Typewriter, the first of its kind, at least from Smith Corona, really is a classic. It's one of the best blendings of a new evolutionary technology using electricity with the old standby, and it really delivers. It really is a wonderful machine, something that every collector should have in his or her collection. Thanks so much.
Please share, comments, like, and subscribe. Thank you! Step right up for the greatest show on earth. Step right up.
Ah, train crash.
Ah!